So I'm here at Kurito, the bottom of Lake Taupo. Only here for a couple of days and want to see what shots I can get. So I'm here in the early morning at the moment. It's a bit overcast, a bit dull, so I don't think I'll get many shots this morning, but I'll have a good look around and I'll walk along the waterfront and note a few places to come back to when the light's better, the time that I've got, or just take some shots because I know I might come back here and I need to take what opportunities I can. I've just lined up a shot here. It's early morning. It was very overcast first thing this morning, so I didn't really find many shots, but I could see a shot developing here where the sun was going to start making some God rays as the clouds sort of broke up a little bit. But I knew I needed something in the foreground to break up the expansive lake. It's just a big blank canvas. So I walked along for quite a way until I found these trees that are submerged, or this one tree that I've lined up. And the other thing I've done to kind of make a composition is I've put on a neutral density filter, quite a dense one, to take exposure to about 6 minutes, which will make the water silky smooth, and I think it really adds something to the shot. When you do that, it makes it kind of calm and ethereal. I mean, I've taken a shot with just a standard short exposure, but to me that doesn't quite make an arresting shot, an interesting shot that will hold your attention. So I'm just in at some bush at Kurito. I like to have a bit of a walk through first, see what I can find, and then come back to places that are promising. Like here's quite a nice view through here, wide angle. Get these trees in the foreground, probably put myself in the background walking through, but it's not great, so I'm going to walk along, see if I can find something better, and maybe come back to this spot. The other thing I like to do is look back the other way. That's quite nice as well, a wee pool of light there in the gap, so that would make quite a nice avenue shot down here. The thing about bushes, or being in bush, it's a good thing to do on a cloudy day because the light can be a bit dull on the beach or outside of bush, but it's ideal for the bush. So this is a good option today. It's quite overcast. And on a sunny day, it's quite difficult to photograph in a bushy area because the patchy sunlight just is too high contrast and looks kind of garish and quite hard to work with. Quite nice around here with all these vines. There's a nice composition over there. Once again, it's all right. Probably will come back and do this to get that central trunk silhouetted against that bushy background. It shows all the vines. Could possibly shoot that tree from here because by shooting through these vines I get something really interesting in the foreground, giving the image a sense of depth. I think this shot's actually worth taking right now, and then I'll move on. So I'm set up to take my vines shot with the tree as a central subject. And I've worked out I've got two compositions here. One wide angle, getting all this foreground vines in, and two zoomed in a bit, so much tighter on the tree. They're two interesting compositions. I'm also bracketing exposures because it's fairly high contrast behind the tree, so I'm not sure about the exposure, whether I want to work with a lighter one or a darker one. So I just bracket the exposure. That's like 3 exposures, one underexposed, one normal, one overexposed. Decide later which one is the optimum one to use. I'm also using a polarising filter because when you're in the bush, polarising filter reduces the reflection off, or the shine that's on leaves, and therefore makes them much greener and more vivid, so that really helps. I've got a remote release because it's fairly dim in the bush here, so I'm using slow shutter speeds, and I don't want to bump the camera if I release the shutter, so that's why I've got a remote release. So let's take the first shot. Then I'll adjust the zoom. And get the second composition. Well, this one will be more silhouetted, so I don't think I need to bracket the exposures for this one, because the silhouette's really what's going to work. And I'm looking at the histogram on the back of the camera to judge my exposure. Yeah, that looks quite interesting. So just carrying along the path, looking for more shots. And here's Brother Michael waiting patiently for me. So I'm just framing up a shot here with my brother sitting on the seat in the distance there, mid-distance, and you get quite a nice composition here with the path going off around the corner in the seat and the subject sitting on the seat. I think it's quite a nice arrangement. What I like to do though is just walk backwards and forwards and side to side until I get the best camera position, which you find by moving around, and that rearranges the elements in your scene until you get a really nice lineup of things. And the good thing about a zoom lens is once I've got my position fixed, I can then just zoom to get the framing I want. So I've got a polarizer on, which I've also got a cable release because my shutter speed will be quite slow. And I'm not sure whether I'll go for shallow depth of field, throwing the foreground out of focus, or whether I'm best to actually keep everything in focus. So I'm going to take 2 variations and then decide later. So I've got one more shot lined up here, and I'm going to get my charming assistant, my brother, to walk through the shot just to create a bit of interest. I've lined up the shot by going backwards and forwards, side to side, until all the elements kind of line up into an interesting composition. A pathway going through the image, good foreground to background depth, and I'm going for a middle range aperture so that everything's in focus, because there's no point, I don't think there's any advantage to leaving things out of focus in this shot. Lighting's nice and soft, so let's do it. I've got the camera on remote because it's at 1/30th of a second. It's a fairly slow shutter speed, slow enough to capture someone walking through but slightly blurred, give a sense of motion, but I don't want to release the shutter on the camera, as I might bump the camera and ruin the shot. So let's give it a go. I've also got a polarizer on once again to darken the greens of the foliage. So Mike, do you want to walk your way through? So I'm just taking a few variations. I can decide later which one looks best.
So here are some parting tips for making the most of limited time and adverse conditions. The first one is to keep moving. Think of your eyes as being like a camera lens that needs to move to rearrange the subject matter until things line up into a pleasing composition. Look around for interesting subjects and view them from all potential angles. Secondly, what subjects suit the conditions? If it's overcast, can you photograph under trees or from inside a structure? Or does the light suit portraits or close-ups? And lastly, what can you add to the shot? This could be a friend walking through the scene, or choosing a shallow depth of field to isolate a subject. Would a polarising or neutral density filter add anything? So that's all for this week. Thanks for watching. See you next time.